we're talking about spiritual flight, going along, bumbling along. There's the first stage or the slow stage, or you might even compare it to the bullock cart stage. It takes forever. And you could be running. That's a lot faster. Then the next stage Baba talked about was taking a high jump, a great leap forward. That's a high jump. But for quite some time Baba has been considering those three stages as a matter of the past. Now, flying is the highest speed. You could be flying in an airplane, which is something like, in physical terms, somewhere around between 400 and 500 miles an hour. But rocket speed, that is also flight. And rocket speed is 10,000 miles an hour. Thanks. 10,000 miles an hour. So in a day, say 16 hours of spiritual effort, 16,000 miles an hour can take you into the rosary of 16,000, or perhaps the rosary of 108, or perhaps the rosary of 8. Earlier this morning, Daddy Janki, who is well known for being in the flying stage on all levels, really flying, physically traveling around the world several times a year, doing things which on the level of normal human beings or even special human beings is quite out of the question. So what is that power that she's using? And if she's using that, why can't we? So let's explore that. And in the group today, the youth group, Nadi was being asked some questions about high speed spiritual effort. And she was speaking about some very practical things. One of her points was not to be careless. So what that means is we have to be quite disciplined in what we do. To be quite disciplined in the spiritual practice means that we're doing the kind of effort that we can keep up. You see, if we get an inspiration, we sit in Baba's, Avyat Bapdada's Murli, and we say, yes, got to do it. But there are things that hold you back. Physical energy is one of them. Distractions is another. Old sanskaras, wasting time, talking too much. So many things are there. So being disciplined means that you have to look very carefully at what you do during a period of 24 hours and what you can let go of. Because the things that hold people back, that keep people from being in the flying stage and send them back to the bumbling along stage, are quite small things, really. One of them is that you think things are supposed to be a certain way and you find that they're not. Anybody experienced that? Yes, one or two? Probably everyone, right? Anybody never experienced that? I don't think so. So you might call this expectations, or you might also call it being naive. And so it's not possible to be in the flying stage if we're conducting our spiritual practice in a naive way. So naive is where you have these imaginary ideas about how it's all supposed to be, and then when it isn't, you get disappointed or irritated or something like this. You see? And then you say, it shouldn't be like this, it should be like that. So anytime you experience a thought like this going on in your mind, you see somebody doing something, or you are aware that somebody's doing something and it doesn't fit in to your scheme of the perfect way that things should be. And then you just raise a little flag in your mind and say, hey self, don't be naive, be realistic. See? Because being naive really sets us back quite a lot. And it also encourages us to be self-centered and selfish. And that means that you see everything as rotating about your own self. You're the center stage, and everything has to be the way you want it. Otherwise, it's their fault, right? Now, that's naive. This is normal in very small children. And although Baba does say, bache, 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 mite, bache, mite, bache, it doesn't mean that we have to become infantile. You see, it doesn't mean we have to be childish. We can be childlike, but we can't be childish. That's very different. So, to be adult means to understand that whatever is the way things are, that's the way they are, and there's nothing you can do about it. But whatever is the way you are, you can do many things with that, you see. And so one very important practical method of increasing our speed is to be very, very realistic and disciplined. That what will I do and what can I do? You know, we very often say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do the other. Have you ever done that? Can't do this. No, I can't do that. We have to change the word can't into the word won't. Because actually we can do anything. But usually when we say, no, I can't do that, it's not true. Usually it's, I don't want to. So if we say, I can't do something, it's actually not exactly honest. And it's more honest to say, no, I don't want to do that. But when you hear yourself say, I can't do it, then you give yourself permission to not do it by saying, well, it's not possible and therefore I'm not going to do it, simply because it's not possible. By changing the vocabulary from can't to won't, then you become much more aware of the attitude that you have. The attitude, well, I don't want to. And that's actually a childish attitude, you see. It's not even an excuse. We're putting aside excuses. And if I say, I won't do something, I don't want to do something. Yeah, I want the results, but I don't want to do what you have to do in order to get it. That's childish, nothing else. And so it goes into the category of being naive, you see. So naiveness and childishness are things going on inside of us which hold us back. And once we identify these things, or change the identification of these things from impossibilities to childish attitudes, we then can have the realization that, well, if I'm having a childish attitude, it's just as possible for me to have a more grown-up attitude. It's the same, isn't it? If I want to have a childish attitude or if I want to have an adult attitude, that's up to me. It doesn't have much to do with the circumstances. If we say, circumstances are holding me back, and we say, because of these things, I can't go forward. You see, you follow through the logic and come to the conclusion that this is a childish attitude. And you ask yourself the question, is this the attitude that I want to continue with, or do I want to have a different attitude? It's my choice. Then you have to say, okay, what do I want? Why am I doing this practice? See? I remember when I very, very first started Raj Yoga, before I even came into Gyan, and I was looking for a very good quality spiritual practice, and I heard, even before I heard about Brahma Kumaris, I heard that Raj Yoga is the most difficult thing that anyone can do. So I thought, right, that's what I'll do. Because my logic was, and if it's that easy, it's probably not worth doing. If it's very, very difficult, then probably there's a good reason why it's difficult. It means that if you do something that's very difficult, then your achievement is very, very great. But if you do something easy, then the achievement is not great. Now, Baba says that this Raj Yoga is easy Raj Yoga. But he also says that while it is easy Raj Yoga, if you do it right, it's also the most difficult of all difficult things. And the reason why it's difficult is because it's subtle, and it requires us to be very aware about what we're actually doing. That means we have to be very honest with ourselves. And many people get held up by deceiving themselves and having all these various excuses. But the reality behind it is there's childishness and there's selfishness. And those two things are not actually values or virtues or qualities or powers. They are weaknesses, and they're character defects, and they're vices. And so they go in the box of things that we want to remove from the configuration of our being. You see, because our being has many elements, many aspects to itself. And we are creating ourselves under the directions of Baba. You see, because he's the creator and we are creation. And we are not just passively sitting there expecting, a glass of water to fly into our hands and a plate of food to land on our lap. You see, it doesn't happen like that. He will give us the suggestions, Sometimes when you hear the word Srimat and you say this is God's orders, and then you say, well, I don't want to have anybody giving me any orders, isn't it? People who have ego don't like receiving orders. They don't mind giving orders, but they don't want to receive any orders. But one of the characteristics of a person who enters into a spiritual practice is that they have ego. If you don't have ego, you don't need any spiritual practice. It's not productive. You don't have anything to do. Because the purpose of a spiritual practice is to take out our ego. So that means it has to be there, otherwise there's nothing to take out. Is it right? I mean, it's reasonable. So this naive attitude, childish attitude, selfish attitude, this is another word for ego. You see? And so Shri Baba comes along and gives us Srimad. And you can translate Srimad in a variety of ways. So it's quite important to understand yourself and see what you are allergic to and what you are open to. So if you're allergic to anyone giving you any orders, then don't translate it as orders, because then you're setting yourself up to be allergic to it. And that's not practical, right? So if you are open to suggestion, right, you might be open to suggestion or recommendation. If you go to somebody for advice and then they say, well, this is my recommendation, then it's up to you whether you apply it or not. So you may be allergic to some orders, but you may not be at all allergic to a recommendation. So it just depends how we put it to ourselves, how we take it in as to how we apply it, you see. And so if we use our capacity for an extended vocabulary to talk to ourselves, because when Baba is talking to the soul, that information comes into the intellect. And where there are reactions against it, this is in the part of ourselves which we want to call body conscious. Now, sometimes people don't have a clue what is the meaning of body conscious. Body conscious doesn't mean being conscious of the body. That's not body conscious. Body conscious means being reactive. When you have a reaction against something or a reaction to something, you don't like it, that's body consciousness. It doesn't have anything to do with the body. But it has something to do with the body in this respect, that self that you're identifying with is the manifest sense of self in this iron-aged world, you see. And this is the thing that has to go, you see. But for most people, most of the time, that's your identity. The soul is a bright shining star. And so we have to find a way to strip off everything until there is nothing left except just a bright shining star. That means anything about you that you could call your identity, that has anything to do with your this life, has to go. Right? Or not? You see. Even with body consciousness, you can say, I am just an instrument. Though the vocabulary is so-called soul conscious. But if you are in body consciousness, in that false ego, and you say, I am just an instrument, the vibration, the feeling that comes from that is a feeling of false ego, a feeling of arrogance, you see. And so we need to be sensitive to that. Anytime I try to impose my views, that's false ego, that's body consciousness, that has to go. Anytime I find myself being argumentative, that is also body consciousness, it has to go. All these things hold us back and prevent us from being in the flying stage. You see what I mean? So a flying stage is when you don't have anything that's holding you back or that's holding you down on the ground. So when you go into an airplane, you have all experienced, you have to go at high speed along the runway until you reach a certain speed that allows you to take off. In the same way, in spiritual practice, we have to be able to take off. That means we have to let go of many of the things that we consider are mechanisms for simply protecting ourselves. Again, we will find in a lot of cases, we are deceiving ourselves. And self-deception is something that holds us down because it makes us assert things in the name of God, in the name of spirituality, in the name of soul consciousness that are actually body conscious. And it means we didn't understand anything, we didn't get the point, and so we remain bumbling along in the bullock cart. So you see what I'm talking about, yes or no? You have to give some indication with your heads. Yes, you understand? So what to do? One of the things that seems to be the case is that we are very unwilling to give up the things that we don't want to give up. Stands to reason. We'll only give up the things we want to give up, and we don't want to give up the things that we have to give up. Otherwise we would have given them up a long time ago. So what has to happen so that we give up the things that we are very attached to, the things that we really consider to be our identity? You see. So we will not do it by ourselves, that's definite. And this is why circumstances are very helpful, and the people who are around us are very good because they clash with those things that we have to give up. Because people and circumstances will never clash with something that is flying in the soul-conscious stage. And when you're flying in the soul-conscious stage, that's really the quality of an angel who's very transparent, who is light, who is not at all worried about what's going to happen, you know, who is ready to follow the suggestions and recommendations, and who can distinguish which suggestions and recommendations are really coming from Baba and which suggestions and recommendations are really coming from Maya. Because Maya is known as Bahurupi, which means that it takes on many, many different forms. And so Maya, seeing a lot of BKs who are dedicated to Baba, will say, okay, let me disguise myself as Baba, and then give them some Shrimat. And then they'll go for it, and they do. So it's a very good yukti. But we have to be on the lookout for that, you see. Because our false consciousness, our childishness, our naive and simplistic attitudes make us very easy prey for Maya. And so we have to not stay in that stage, otherwise we can't progress. You see? So the power of discrimination or discernment is extremely important. And discernment, again, is an area where self-deception can come in very easily, because our power of discernment can be overshadowed or tinted or tainted by our hidden agenda. Hidden agenda is selfishness. Selfishness means that I want what I can get for myself right now, right quick. That's selfishness. Many people are motivated by selfishness, which is connected with short-sightedness. You see? You can't see further than the immediate fulfillment of what you feel to be necessary and essential. And you don't discern that this is again another little game of Maya, because you are worried about yourself. That means you don't have faith, the faith that will let go of all of that stuff, you see. So circumstances will come along and strike you with some opposing blow. You may have experienced this. It may be that whoever you're living with is not the way you want them to be. It's hardly ever like that, right? And so you will butt up against the different sanskaras. And then you will say, well, if I allow myself to be, overshadowed by this other person's sanskaras, then that would be wrong. So then you want to say, well, they have to be the way you want, or else you're not interested. But Baba has said, no, you have to find a way to be flying with Baba, whether the people around you are the way you want or not. Okay? Sometimes they are exactly the way you want. That's usually when you don't have any particular desires that they should be one way or the other. Huh? If you are ready to accept a person exactly the way they are, then you don't have any conflict with them. And you maintain your self-respect, and you have utmost respect for the other. The balance of these two things is a very, very good recipe for moving from the bumbling along stage to the easy stage, Because to be in the easy moving along stage is a very good way to move into the flying stage. To be very easy with other people's sanskaras and behavior. To be very easy with what you get, Sometimes people are worried about what they get, that if I don't get what the other people are getting, then it means my status is lower. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with it, Baba has taught us about simplifying ourselves. Because when we're going flying, depending on which country you're coming from, but for many countries, and as here within India, you have a 20 kilos weight limit, and you can only take 20 kilos of stuff. And so that means that there are some things that you can't take, But if you want to be really in the flying stage as a yogi, then you want to simplify things and remove as much dead weight as you possibly can. And things like expectations and desires, and this should be like this and that should be like that, they actually take the form of burdens. And you know that in the Murli Baba just spoke to us, he gave us an image, do you want to have your halo on your head, or do you want a basket on your head? And so then the question arises in people's minds, what kind of basket are we talking about here? So I don't know if you've been down to the market, but the people have quite a large basket which may carry maybe 20 kilos of potatoes or tomatoes or something like that, and they put it on their head and they carry it, you see. And so you could have that. Or if you have garbage, a basket full of garbage on your head, that's another possibility. And or you could have your halo, you see. And so if you have, negativity or garbage, then you've got a basket full of garbage on your head or in your head. Or you could just be free from all those things and have a halo. A crown of light means a halo, means a glow, And so if you are in a glowing state, and you don't have any worries because you gave all your worries to Baba, then whatever is around you, it may be that you say, oh, this is difficult. Food is difficult, accommodation is difficult, transportation is difficult, health is difficult. There's a list of things that are specially designed to go in the column of difficult. And then you can see whether you want to go along with that and say, yeah, because of this I can't do that, and because of that I can't do this, you see. So anything which goes in that column called difficult, our mind goes in it. And so when our mind is going into that, then you're piling things into that basket. And so it's called a burden. You can't take off when you've got a burden, you see. So we have to figure out a way to think about things so that they don't constitute a burden. And so there are various yuktis that you can use. Baba has given us many, many yuktis, and you can also come up with your own yuktis. And one little expression that I use for myself whenever there's something that's happening where your immediate thought might be, oh, this is inconvenient, So I ask myself, well, self, are you suffering? I say, no, I'm not suffering. It may be inconvenient, but it's okay. I'm not suffering. So like that, you can find some or another little expression that you can tell yourself when you're faced with something that your body-conscious sanskaras classify as an obstruction or an obstacle or something that you don't like. You see, that you would rather have it be some other way. And then the self-melting starts to become more easy. Because melting the self is very important in the flying stage. Melting means that you're not going to be crashing into or clashing into or clashing against people or circumstances or things. Melting has to do with flexibility. And the more flexible we are, the less these impediments actually take up mental time. Something may be there, but if you're easy about it, you don't mind about it, then you can get on with the real work, which is to be headed towards Baba. Because as also we've been hearing in some of the classes, my Baba means I'm going in that direction, the direction of Baba. So it's, again, something you can ask yourself is anything which is not Baba, why are you going in that direction? If you're going in that direction, you're piling things into your basket, which you then have to unpile and then throw the basket away and then find your halo, polish it up, put it back on, you know. As long as you're focused on Baba, then wearing that halo is an easy thing, you see, and you need a halo to be flying. You can't fly with a basket on your head. Suppose if you're having a helicopter, and the helicopter has these rotary wings, so your halo is acting like rotary wings. And if you're putting the basket on your head, then it's acting like something that's holding you down. And then you have to struggle to carry this thing, you see. And whichever way you think about things is free choice, you see. And so this is why we change I can't into I won't. And even we have another expression, I have to. You know, I can't because I have to. Have you done that before? I can't because I have to. No. I won't because I'm not going to. If we say, this is what I want to do, then do it. Keeping away from excuses, you see. And these excuses make us slow down. So Baba says, change mine into yours. You saw that expression, the M to the T. Now, Baba wasn't talking about English letters, but Hindi letters. So did you see what an M looks like in Hindi? Yeah? Did you see? It looks like this, like that. So it's got a thing sticking up. And then the T is the same thing, but instead of sticking up, it's sticking down. So that's the difference between the letter M and the letter T. Is one has a little bit sticking up, and the other one has the same places sticking down. So this thing that's like me sticking up, you know, put that down. And then you have gone from mera to tera, you see. And so this selfishness that holds us back and makes us say me, I, what about me? You shift that and say yours. And there's a story about this, one of the Sikh gurus. I think it was Tej Singh. He was a devotee, and he was counting, and the number 13 is also the same as the word yours. And then he got lost in spiritual intoxication when he got to 13, and it went from 13 to just yours, I am yours. This is the thing we have to do, is surrender ourselves to Baba. If you're surrendering yourselves to nothing, it's very difficult. This arrogance, selfishness, short-sightedness, naivete, childishness, that's all this thing called body consciousness, this all has to be sacrificed. And most of this is the way you identify yourself. You say, oh, all this is me. And when you give yourself to Baba, then it's easy for those things to go. And when you give yourself to Baba, it mustn't be with strings attached or conditions. It has to be an unconditional surrender. And this part is also difficult for people because they're worried. What will happen to me? You have to surrender to Baba, regardless of what will happen to me, because what will happen to you? You will lose your body. That's what will happen to you. Because that's the whole point. We surrender to Baba means we are surrendering up our bodies. And when we go back to the soul world, we will not take our bodies with us, will we? So if we surrender to Baba on condition that our body is this and that and the other, then that doesn't make any sense, does it? So we have to surrender to Baba, which means I'm surrendering my soul to Baba, and the body consciousness, all these bodily worries, we're surrendering them as well. But our instinct for survival stops us from doing that, because we're worried what will happen. What about my food? What about my accommodation? What about my status? What about my money? What will I do? And so this is also why a helpful thing in the flying stage is to wake up in the morning and say, okay, Baba, this is the last day. Isn't it? This is what we've been hearing also in many classes lately, that Mama used to say. There's also there in Christian teachings, that live every day as if it is your last. So we say that, but then if we wake up in the morning and at Amrit Vela we say, okay, Baba, this is the last day. How am I going to do this day? This is the last day. So I'm not going to be worried about my body on the last day, because it's the last day. I'm leaving it. So I need to be concerned about my stage. And my stage means on the last day, it is Baba in front of me. You see? And anything that isn't Baba comes in front of you to distract you from Baba. And so you have a choice. You can see that distraction if you like it, or if you don't like it, because it'll either be an attraction or a repulsion. You see. So practice looking upon it with neutrality and allow it to be whatever it is. I mean, you're not really that much interested whether it's an attraction or a repulsion, because where you want to look is Baba. Isn't it? Because we say, Baba, you are my world, and our destination is Baba. And so whenever we say something in our mind's voice, Baba is listening. Baba is listening, and so are you saying such a thing which is being addressed to Baba? Even if it may be a comment on what's going on, it's still, Baba has said, I am always with you. This is a guarantee, this is a promise that Baba says, I am always with you. I think it's good to keep the front seats for the seniors. So if you just go to the side, that may be necessary. Daddy is coming. So think about who's in front of you, who's always with you. And Baba is always with me. So it means he's listening to what I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking something which is going to draw him to me, then I will feel it's very easy to take off. If I'm focusing on these surrounding distractions or attractions or repulsions, then I'm actually not really focused on Baba, I'm focused on those things. So he will see that he's with me, but I'm not with him. So he'll say, see you later. Because there's plenty of other people who want to be with him. And so there is a competition among all the BKs, that who can have Baba with them. Right? There's one Baba. Of course, he is such that he can be with whoever is with him. But if we are with other things, then if I am not with Baba, then Baba will not be with me, because it's a two-way thing. Baba is very much of a reciprocal being. And so use this yukti, I'm not suffering. You've got to be really suffering in order to be suffering. And even then, it's just settling karma. I, the soul, am not suffering. Keep yourself above and above and above. All of these things that are there specifically to pull you down, If something is pulling you down and you say, well, I can't fly because something's pulling you down, it means you missed the point entirely. Of course it's pulling you down. It's supposed to pull you down. And you were supposed to go up anyway. So you need to realize that while this thing is pulling me down, whether it's health or wealth or sanskara clashes or whatever the thing is that's pulling me down, you have to understand that it's supposed to be pulling you down. It has to pull you down. But you don't have to go with it, you see. Then you can fly. And in order to not go with it, you have to really, really relax in the face of it and let it go. Because if you fight it, you engage in it, holding on to it more. Whereas if you just let it be whatever it is and let it go, then it doesn't have such a strong hold on you. Then it's easy for you to fly. And then also think about that I am leaving this body. I'm not concerned about status, position, other people's opinions, any of these things. Just let me pick up Baba's signals. Let me do whatever I can to create my fortune according to Baba's guidance. And the rest, let it be, The thing that we have to change is only ourselves. We don't have to change circumstances. We don't have to be concerned about what is going on the outside of this body. And this is why Baba has given us the knowledge of drama, which is to let us know very clearly that whatever is going on the outside of this body is fixed, and that is the way it is, and it's a movie. So you don't worry about that. You worry about how you are relating to it. And you have to be relating to it in such a way that it doesn't grab a hold of you. And this is why Baba teaches us to be the detached observer and the witness. Because during the time of destruction, when we are karmatit, and destruction is there both at the same time, then we will have plenty of pulls, and we'll have plenty of pulls, and we have to stay beyond it. There'll be pulls from matter, pulls from other people suffering, pulls from things that make us afraid. Many kinds of pulls will be there. And it's the practice of remaining just flying as the soul, taking off. This is the last day, the last day, the last day. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Have that practice for a long period of time. And then at the time when any test comes, observe how quickly you can let it be whatever it is and let go and fly. Because all of these events that are taking place must be considered as tests as opposed to realities. If we think, oh, this is real, then the next thought is, well, I have to do something about it. If we think it's a test, then we have to say, it's a test of what? you know. And what is the stage I need to be in so that I'm actually taking off, you see. So when we engage in the thing, immediately it pulls you down. You let it be what it is. Understand that it's teaching you to not respond in your habitual way, but to come up with a new response that allows you to be free from it. Then you feel, yeah, I'm past the test. And it'll be a test of faith in being a soul, in Baba being close, and in letting go. So you can try some of these things. Now we're going to have some meditation.